My ex-husband, Mark, thought he had me. The smirk on his face, a look that had haunted me through our entire divorce, practically screamed victory from across the courtroom. I could feel my hope starting to shrivel. To him, this wasn't the sad end of a marriage, it was a business deal, and I was the last asset to be liquidated. But he had no idea. He couldn't have possibly imagined that my late father, a man he'd always written off, had left me one last thing. It wasn't just money. It was a single, perfectly crafted sentence buried deep in his will. A sentence the judge was about to see, and one that would wipe that arrogant smirk clean off his face for good. When I first met Mark, he could charm an entire room with a single smile. He was ambitious, handsome, and when he looked at me, he made me feel like I was the only person in the world. We were the golden couple. Our friends were jealous, my family was thrilled, and for a while, I really thought I was living a fairy tale. The only person who ever seemed to pause was my dad. My dad was a quiet man, an observer. He'd built his construction business from nothing, and he just had a knack for seeing the real foundations of things, whether it was a skyscraper or a person. When he looked at Mark, he didn't see the charm, he saw the angle. He'd pull me aside and say quiet things, like, "Honey, make sure you always have a bank account in your own name, or never let a man make you feel small in your own home." At the time, I just thought he was being an overprotective dad. Now, I realize he was handing me a survival guide. The golden sheen of our marriage started to dull after a few years. Mark's ambition soured into a desperate need for control. My opinions became cute, my career was a nice little hobby, and the inheritance I got from my grandparents was quickly absorbed into a joint account for our future. He wasn't my partner, he was my self-appointed CEO. He loved the status that came with my family's name but hated that it wasn't his. I wasn't his wife, I was a stepping stone. A year ago, my dad passed away. The grief was an absolute tidal wave, and right in the middle of it, Mark's main concern was the will. He'd ask these casual, offhand questions about the estate, the value of Dad's business, what my cut was going to be. It was bone-chilling. That's when the last piece of the illusion just shattered. I wasn't grieving with my husband, I was sitting next to a vulture waiting for a meal. The man I married was gone. Honestly, I'm not sure he was ever really there. The moment I filed for divorce, Mark's charming husband mask didn't just slip, he ripped it off and torched it. All that charm was replaced by a cold, cruel mission, to make me pay for leaving, not just emotionally, but for every single penny. His number one target was the house. My home. The one place in the world that felt like mine. Dad had helped me buy it years before I even married Mark, and it was my sanctuary. To Mark, it was just the biggest prize on the board. He cooked up this story for the court about how his sweat equity from mowing the lawn and his invaluable contributions to our social life had made the house what it was. He argued it was a marital asset, and he demanded the court force me to sell it and give him half. The day we signed the separation papers is a day I'll never forget. That was the day the smirk was born. He leaned over the table in his lawyer's fancy office, looked me right in the eye and said, "You're going to be so lost without me. Good luck making it on your own." He signed his name with this big flourish, like a celebrity signing an autograph. That smirk followed me everywhere after that. It was in every nasty email, in every courtroom appearance, and in my nightmares. It was the look of a man who was absolutely certain he had already won. And sitting there in the courtroom for the final hearing, it really looked like he was right. My lawyer looked grim. Mark was leaning back in his chair, whispering and laughing with his own lawyer, that lazy, confident smirk plastered on his face. He'd catch my eye and give a little nod, as if to say, "It's over. I win. You lose." I felt so small. All I could do was cling to the memory of my dad's quiet strength like it was a life raft. Before we get to the moment that changed everything, tell me what you think in the comments below. Have you ever had to deal with someone so smug they couldn't see what was coming? And if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who looked completely unimpressed by Mark's whole act, was reviewing the final arguments. Mark's lawyer had just wrapped up a big speech about how his client was entitled to half the value of the home that was the heart of their marriage. That's when my lawyer stood. "Your Honor," she said, her voice perfectly calm. "We'd like to submit a final piece of evidence that clarifies the provenance of the family home." She handed a certified copy of my father's last will and testament, along with a stack of financial records, to the bailiff. Mark's lawyer shot up. "Objection. This is irrelevant. A will has no bearing on the division of marital property." The judge just held up a hand. "I'll be the judge of what's relevant, counselor," she said, silencing him instantly. She took a few moments to read the documents, her eyes scanning the pages. The silence in the room was deafening. Mark's smirk finally wavered. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. Then the judge looked up over her glasses, first at Mark's lawyer, then right at me. "Actually," she said, her tone sharp, "this is exceptionally relevant." A hush fell over the courtroom. The judge cleared her throat. "I have reviewed the deceased's will and the corresponding bank statements," she announced. "The documents show a direct transfer of $500,000 from the estate of the plaintiff's father into the escrow account for the purchase of the property in question. The will explicitly states, and I quote, that this sum was a gift for the sole and exclusive purpose of purchasing her own home, to be held as her separate and protected property, free and clear of any and all marital claims, now or in the future." Silence. Absolute, pin-drop silence. I didn't look at the judge. I didn't look at my lawyer. I looked straight at Mark. The smirk wasn't just gone, it had collapsed. His jaw went slack, the blood drained from his face, and his eyes darted between me and his lawyer in pure panic. He finally got it. He'd been completely outplayed by a man who wasn't even there to see it. The judge wasn't finished. "This court has been provided a clear and unbroken paper trail," she said, her gaze fixed on Mark. "The funds were an inheritance, gifted as separate property. They were never commingled, and they were never a marital asset. The house is unequivocally the sole and separate property of the plaintiff." It was like a dam breaking. With the house, his main prize, now legally and untouchably mine, Mark's entire case just disintegrated. His lawyer, flustered, tried to pivot, stammering about a need for more spousal support. The judge cut him right off. "Counselor," she said, her voice like ice, "your client's request for spousal support was largely based on a lifestyle funded by assets to which he has no legal claim. This court will not entertain claims designed to punish a spouse rather than address a genuine financial need." Request denied. One by one, the judge dismantled every single one of his greedy, overblown claims. The final ruling was clean and simple. I kept my house. I kept my inheritance. I kept what was mine before I ever met him. Mark was entitled to half of our small joint savings account and his car. He was walking away with little more than he'd walked in with. When the judge finally banged her gavel, the sound echoed in the quiet room. It was done. Mark couldn't even look at me. He just stared straight ahead, his face a hollow mask. The smug, arrogant man who swaggered in that morning was gone. In his place was a small, defeated man who had fatally underestimated my father's love for me. Justice wasn't some loud, screaming match. It was quiet. It was a single, perfectly preserved paper trail that had rewritten his entire reality. As he walked out of that courtroom, he looked like a ghost, that smirk just a faint memory of a victory he was never, ever going to have. In the weeks after, the silence in my house felt different. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of a broken marriage anymore. It was the light, easy silence of freedom. Sure, the legal win felt good, but the real victory was so much bigger than that. It wasn't about the money or even the house. It was about getting my life back. My dad's final gift wasn't that sentence in his will, or the money that came with it. His real gift was his foresight. It was one final act of a father making sure his little girl was going to be okay. He saw Mark for exactly who he was from day one, and even after he was gone, he was still looking out for me. The best revenge wasn't watching that smirk vanish from Mark's face, though I have to admit, that was a pretty great moment. The best revenge is my peace. It's waking up in my home, a home that is truly and completely mine, without that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. It's the quiet joy of knowing that his voice, his judgment, his arrogance, it's all gone. That smirk is gone, and in its place is a future that I get to build for myself, on a foundation my father made sure would never, ever break. What do you think my dad would have said if he could have seen that moment in court? Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching.